The car is jolting along an unpaved road. Samuel points to a side street. We have to turn right there. We're driving through the chaotic streets of eastern Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone. We're on our way to Annabel.
Whatever you don't need, you can leave it in the car.
I step out of Samuel's grey Toyota. In front of me there is a concrete skeleton of a building. The structure is 2 stories high and looks unstable. A web of wooden poles holds up the corrugated metal sheets that make up the roof. Samuel decides to stay in the car. You'll get to know him later on. His colleague, Karoma, walks ahead towards the building. We have to jump across the water of a polluted ditch to reach the entrance. Inside, it's a crowded space. Children run past me, their bare feet slapping against the wet floor. It's summer break, but I can't help wondering whether they'd be going to school at all. The air inside is thick with smoke. 2 women are burning peppercorns over an open fire. The fumes are stinging my eyes. They smile at me, and as I suppress a cough, I wave back at them.
Good morning.
Suddenly I feel rather big and awkward, a nearly 2-meter tall Dutch guy in this half-finished house on the other side of the world. What am I doing here? I follow Karoma, Samuel's colleague, up the stairs. We walk to the end of a narrow corridor where he pulls aside a cloth. Behind it, an opening appears, leading into a dark room. The room smells damp, and the ceiling is still leaking from the rain. And there, on the floor, I see her, Annabel, just 3 years old, sitting on her mother's lap. They're seated on a pile of thin, wet blankets. This room is all they have. Her mother has to support her little head with her hand, and Annabel's arms hang limp at her sides. I put on a big smile as I greet them.
Oh. Hi, Annabel.
But inside, something else is happening. Everything inside of me is screaming. Something has to be done to help. But the question is, what can be done? My name is Max Boogaard, and you're listening to The Child in the Pond, Episode 1, A Return to Nature. You might be wondering where the title of this podcast series comes from. For the answer, we need to go back in time a little. A few years ago, at university, I took an introductory course in ethics, the study of determining what's right and wrong. I was excited. The syllabus was filled with all the classic philosophers. But in the very first class, the professor wanted to start with something else. He said, "Close your books and listen up. Let's begin with a short story," he went on. "And for some people, there is a life before hearing that story and a life after. So, dear listener, consider yourself warned because I'm about to tell it to you right now." The story was conceived in the 1970s by the renowned philosopher Peter Singer, and it went something like this. Imagine this. You're walking through a park on your way to work, and you pass a small pond. Sometimes you see children playing there, but this morning it's early and chilly out. So you're startled when you notice something moving in the pond, and as you get closer, you see that it's a small child. She's splashing around in panic. Her head is sinking under the water, over and over again. She can't keep herself upright. And no one else is around. No parent, no babysitter. Her head is barely above the surface. And you realize, if you do nothing, she will drown. Stepping into the pond is easy and safe. So you run towards the water's edge, but just before you jump in, another thought crosses your mind. Your new shoes that you just bought will be ruined, covered in mud. And of course your suit will be soaked, basically worthless afterwards. And by the time you've handed the child over to someone who can take care of her, you're almost certainly gonna be late for work. So you hesitate for a second. Is this child really my responsibility? The lecturer looked around the classroom and asked, So, what do you guys think? And now I'm asking you, the listener of this podcast. And while I can't exactly know your moral instincts, I'm willing to take a guess. You probably think the same as most people do. Of course you jump in the pond. Of course you save the child. Shoes, a suit, work, none of it matters in comparison. And honestly, if you don't feel that way, I'm not sure this podcast is really for you. I think we can agree on this much. It would be horrifying to let the child drown. So okay, we jump into the water and we save the child. That was also the response in the classroom. And so the professor continued his story. Now that we all agree that we should jump into the water, that we would sacrifice something small like a suit or a pair of shoes to save a life, one question remains. How is it possible that so many of us are in fact in a very similar situation and don't act? Not that we could literally rescue children from ponds every day, but many of us, especially those who live in the wealthiest countries of the world, walk past metaphorical ponds every day filled with drowning children. Because we know that children suffer unnecessarily or even die from preventable diseases, hunger, poverty, or neglect, or in the case of this podcast, from the consequences of a disability, and we know there are effective organizations doing something about it, for amounts of money that are, compared to what we spend every day, actually quite small. In fact, making an online donation that might save a child's life is probably easier than jumping into your local pond. And yet, most people don't do it, or barely do so. My classmates and myself, often the loudest voice in the room, fell silent. No one had a convincing response to the story. The question stayed with me for days. Isn't every euro you spend on something non-essential also a euro that could help save a life? And what does that demand of me? Or does it make a difference that a child isn't drowning right in front of you, but far away? Or that it's not just one child, but maybe millions? And why doesn't it then feel the same? As I searched for ways out of this dilemma, perhaps the way you're doing it right now, the story slowly faded away into the background, because student life went on. And now, years later, I'm here, in Freetown, in the room with Annabel and her mother, a child in urgent need of help. The metaphorical pond lies right in front of me. On behalf of Liliane Fonds, I will be following the work of Samuel and his team over the coming days. Their work saves and changes lives, yet it rarely receives the attention it deserves. And as I share these stories with you, I'm trying to investigate something else as well. A question that has been haunting me ever since that philosophy class about the pond. How far should you and I go to help others? Why does a child in immediate danger close to us feel so different from a child away? And what does that difference say about me, about us? This won't always be a happy story, but we will end with a story of hope. That I promise. Let's begin. It's my first day in Sierra Leone's capital, Freetown. I'm picked up at my hotel by the cheerful Samuel and his right-hand man, Karoma.
Good morning.
Hey,
Good morning.
Samuel.
Hi, Max. How are you?
Hi.
Hello.
Really
how
nice
are
to meet you.
Yeah.
Sierra Leone is a small country on the west coast of Africa. It is among the poorest countries in the world. And in circumstances like these, there is a harsh reality. The most vulnerable people often suffer the most. And Sierra Leone has many vulnerable groups. An estimated 1 in 15 children lives with a disability. Samuel has devoted his life to helping these children. He is in his early 30s, but he has already a long political career behind him, as he comes from an influential political family. But he left the power and prestige of that world behind, and now he works almost day and night to help these children. As he drives us through the chaos of Freetown, Samuel introduces himself.
All right. So I'm Samuel McAuliffe. I'm the operations director for One Family People Sierra Leone. And One Family People is a disability-focused non-governmental organization that works with children and youth with disabilities, and at the moment we currently implement a community-based rehabilitation program that we.
So Samuel is the director of the organization One Family People. His team works with what is known as the CBR method, community-based rehabilitation. In other words, rehabilitation for children with disabilities with a strong focus on the community. Samuel explains that in the past, aid organizations in Sierra Leone often focused on helping just one child.
We used to identify a child, find out what they need, and then try to solve all the problems of that child.
And all the energy and resources were poured into solving the problems of that single child. But in a country like Sierra Leone, there simply aren't enough resources for such an approach. To get a sense of the shortage in proper healthcare systems, when Ebola broke out in 2014, Sierra Leone only had 150 doctors in the entire country. By comparison, a country like the Netherlands, where I'm from, for roughly the same population, we have 80,000.
CBI does not only invest in the child, but CBI invests in the community around the child, but then not only for that child, but for future children that will come out from that community with either disabilities or not, that will be able to, that will ensure that...
Little police checkpoint, don't worry.
Hello, how are you?
Our conversation is interrupted by a check at one of the many police checkpoints in the city. So let me briefly summarize in the meantime. CBR, community-based rehabilitation, is an approach that doesn't just focus on the child with a disability, but also involves the entire community around them, creating lasting change, also for children with disabilities born in the future. Over the coming days, I'll be traveling with Samuel and his colleagues to see how this method works in practice, because it sounds promising, but for me it's also still quite abstract. And that's why Samuel thinks it's important that on my first day in Sierra Leone, I see with my own eyes who this approach is for, and just how complex the circumstances are. And that's why we're visiting the 3-year-old Annabel and her mother Ramatu in the half-finished concrete building.
Is it okay if I ask some questions?
We have taken a seat on a small bench in the shared hallway of the house. Annabel sits on her mother's lap. And Ramatu is glad to share her story with us.
Can you tell me a little bit about Annabel? What is she like?
So you say me tell us more about Annabel and Annabel be to you. Annabel is my daughter.
Annabel.
So Annabel was like 4 months old when she had a convulsion. Because Annabel was not born like this. It was after the convulsion that Annabel became this sick.
She tells us that Annabel had a convulsion when she was just 4 months old. I look at Annabel, a beautiful girl with an intelligent gaze, but she can't hold her head up on her own. Her body is limp and she startles at loud noises. Making eye contact is difficult for her. Something is clearly very wrong.
So from then on, I'll go to an hospital.
After that, we went to the hospital. We were at the hospital for about 3 weeks and few days. And the sister told her to come to Sierra Leone to look for medicine.
So before
It is important to know that in Sierra Leone there are many traditional healers. People who try to heal using plants, homemade medicines, and spiritual rituals. This is the first time I'm hearing about them. Little do I know that later on I would find myself sitting face to face with one.
So from then now, I know your dad helped me for take care of him. Then the papa abandoned me.
Then because of the situation of Annabel, the dad abandoned us. So I decided to return to my dad's house, which is here.
In this building, Ramatu and Annabel live alongside about 100 other people. And even though many of them are family, it's not a safe place for Annabel and her mother.
Sometimes can come where Annabel.
Even family members are laughing at us because of Annabel's situation. Sometimes when I have a bad day about Annabel's situation, I will stay indoors the whole of the day and also feel very sad when I see the age mates of Annabel are playing outside, so I feel sad.
Day after day, Annabel and her mother Ramatu sit in that dark room. Until one day, when they got a visit from a stranger named Barbara.
So the CBR worker, Barbara, came around, was asking for children that were hidden. And someone...
Barbara is a young woman from Freetown. She studied gender studies and now works as a CBR worker with Samuel and his team.
My name is Barbara Samura. I'm a CBR coordinator in partnership with the One Family People and Liliane Foundation.
Barbara discovered Annabel, and as we'll hear later, she may well have saved her life. I meet Barbara later that day to hear her side of the story. I want to know how one can possibly find a child being hidden away in a dark room in the middle of a city like Freetown.
My job as a CBR coordinator is identify children with disabilities, more especially children that are hidden.
Barbara explains that a large part of her work is identifying hidden children. And how she does that you'll hear in a moment. But first, why are these children hidden in the first place?
What we mean by hidden children, when you look at the kind of disability they are living with, most parents tend to hide them. Because of the stigma and the isolation from the society, these parents tend to keep their child away from this marginalization. So what they intend to do, they keep this child inside the house instead of interacting with.
So children are hidden because of stigma, the negative ideas surrounding disability. Due to a lack of information, many people believe that children with disabilities are possessed by evil spirits. Parents then try to protect these children from hostility within the community by keeping them indoors.
So these children are hidden, and it's our job, and as a CBR coordinator, to go into this community because there are plenty out there. They too have a life.
I asked Barbara about Annabel and how she managed to find her. And while Annabel's situation made an enormous impression on me, for Barbara this is sadly a daily reality.
So what I did, I was on the field looking out for hidden children. So I was moving from one community and I was specific about the kind of child I'm looking at.
On her motorbike, Barbara travels from one community to the next. She stays there for a while, chats with the residents, listens, observes, and slowly she gets to know the people. She tries to find out whether somewhere behind closed doors a child is being hidden.
When I went to that community, I asked around, saying, hey, I want to do a documentation about a child living with this disability. Do you know any? And then a guy said, yes, I knew one. Her name is Annabel.
And that's how Barbara was eventually pointed towards the concrete building. A few weeks ago, she climbed up the same stairs as I did just now. She pulled the cloth aside and found Annabel and her mother.
Then we walked to the house, met the mother. She was upstairs. We went to the mother. Then I introduced myself, saying I'm Barbara, I came from this organization, and I'm looking for children living with disability like Annabel, and I'm here to do a child story, if you don't mind. And she said yes.
Ramatu tells me how much impact Barbara's visit has had on her life.
So from then on, Sister Barbara gave me full confidence.
So Barbara gave her words of encouragement, and that she should have hope that a lot will happen to Annabel in the future.
Yeah.
Barbara asked Ramatu what she would like to do with her own future.
So Barbara asked her that what does she want to do with her own life in future. She does hairdressing, but she wants to further with it.
Ramatu tells me she wants to become a better hairdresser, but she also dreams of much more than that.
I tell Barbara, I say, I want to become a business person.
And after that, she wants to become a big businesswoman.
Yeah.
My own situation is not good for me. The situation is rough.
But her current situation is not really good. It's very rough. That she can barely manage to survive.
And yet, while she dreams big, she's in a daily struggle just to survive. While I'm talking to Ramatu, several adult family members move around us, clearly trying to listen in. And I find myself wondering, why can't they help her? By taking care of Annabel from time to time so Ramatu can work. But I quickly realize how deeply I'm underestimating the power of stigma surrounding disability.
Yeah. And what do the family think?
So what in the family they see like?
They say the pikin are devil.
So they say that Annabel is a demon and she must be returned. to nature.
What does that mean?
Which means they will do some rituals, some ceremony, and they will take Annabel deep into the forest, and they will just leave her there for animals to eat.
Has her family proposed that to her?
Yes.
They say that?
Yes.
I fall silent and look at Koroma in disbelief. I wonder if I've understood him correctly. According to some of her family, Annabel should be returned to nature, left in the forest for animals to
How
eat.
does that feel?
So how you feel?
But all the way they cow that talk there, and they feel bad, and they even vex.
So when they told her that conversation about taking her back, she feels sad, and she always feel angry when they tell her to take the child back to nature.
Ramatu tells me how angry this makes her, that people even say this to her in the streets, that Annabel should be returned to nature.
So people in the streets will provoke her to say, up to now you are carrying this child. By now this child should have been walking. Don't you know that this child is a demon? Why haven't you returned this child to nature up to now? Then she says she knows that her child is a human being and not a demon. Let them leave her alone.
Once again, I'm overwhelmed by that same feeling. We have to act now. We have to run into the water and save the child that's drowning. But I don't know what to say, let alone how I can help. I thank Ramatu for sharing her story, and that's all I managed to say.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
As we slowly walk outside, several family members greet us again. And with even greater discomfort, I greet them back. Outside, Samuel is waiting in the car.
Right.
I heard the atmosphere was very friendly.
Yes.
Yeah, the smoke was also really nice too.
Yeah, the pepper smoke was good. Lovely.
Lovely.
As we drive, Samuel notices I've fallen silent. I stare out the window, replaying in my mind everything I've just seen and heard. Samuel asks me what I'm thinking about, but my thoughts are racing, so I'm trying to catch them one by one.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, for me it's even a shock just entering the home, seeing how the healthy kids live. Like, there's leakages everywhere. It's very crowded, and then you see that there's this one kid who is even so far has such a big disadvantage even compared to the other kids who are already disadvantaged.
Yeah.
So that's kind of bizarre in a way.
Yeah, you get into the room.
Yeah.
Even Koroma, who has worked in this field for years, is deeply affected by Annabel's situation. How she lay there on piles of cloths in that damp room, how she never goes outside.
It's a tough place to live.
It is.
It's a tough place.
Yeah.
When I first entered the room and I saw that there were rags everywhere, and they were actually sleeping on the rags, I mean, not on a proper bed, I mean, that turns me off really, because seeing Annabel to grow up in that kind of situation, I mean, it's really bad, you know.
And it's not just Koroma. Samuel starts talking too about how heavy this work can be.
You know, you feel responsible. So sometimes, like, when I started newly, one thing I really struggled with was how to leave the work in the office and then go home. Because whenever you go home, you have the thoughts in your head. It keep punching you all the time. Like, what can we do? What can we do? How can we fix this?
Sometimes, he says, it keeps him awake all night.
Like the day we came to see Annabel, there was a heavy downpour of rain. And that day I went home, and all I could think of was that the roof was so leaky that they were sleeping practically in water, and they don't have a bed, so the water goes on the ground and the water hits them directly. Imagine just a single leakage in your bed, in your roof, you feel uncomfortable. Imagine a downpour in your bed. How does that make you feel? So I couldn't sleep much that night. I was really disturbed about it, you know.
I know I'm not the one who can solve this, that my role is here to mainly listen and share the stories. Still, I tell Samuel and Karoma that making a podcast suddenly feels trivial. But Samuel smiles and says that even a short visit like this can make a difference.
Yeah, for the first time in Annabel's life, they now know that people care about her. And they see people come just to talk to her, just to come to talk about her, just to come to understand her situation. That, in a way, has spiked a level of interest within the community that there must be something special about her for people to come.
But that too comes with a risk, because you have no control over what the family might start to expect. And Samuel and his team have limited resources.
So they will now start saying, okay, probably through this child, our family is going to be this. Our family is going to be... That's now where we have to manage those expectations.
Yeah.
Just because people come in doesn't mean all your problems are going to disappear.
It suddenly hits me how complex the work of Samuel and his colleagues really is. Helping here also means managing expectations, setting boundaries, offering hope, but also carefully rationing it. In the car back to the hotel, what I feel most of all is defeat. But Samuel is smiling. Where I see walls, he sees opportunities. And that indestructible optimism is something I'll come to admire over and over again in the days ahead.
Yeah, but then the good thing is Annabel can be helped. There is a way to elevate their situation. And there is hope for her case. There's hope for the mother too.
Samuel and Karoma immediately look to the community itself. That's where they believe the key lies. How can Ramatu be supported so she can return to her work as hairdresser?
I think she's already doing hairdressing, but then that's a very minimalistic way. We need to see how we could introduce more sustainable business solutions and making sure that she understands some of these and probably...
They talk about a training course, about educating her family, about getting the right diagnosis for Annabel, physiotherapy, nutrition. No despair, just action.
For me, I think we have to firstly do a comprehensive assessment and then develop a development plan for her, but then do an overall needs assessment for the family, that's Annabel and her mother, and see what can be done to help her.
As I slowly begin to see the outlines of a better life for Annabel and her mother, one sentence keeps echoing in my head. She should be returned to nature. A little awkwardly, I bring it up. I have no idea how Samuel and Karoma look at this.
What I've been... how do you look at the... the family is saying, return the child to nature, which pretty much means kill the child.
Yeah.
Do you, as a health worker or in this, do you blame the family members for thinking that? How do you handle that, thinking about that? Because it sounds to me people are just talking about killing a child.
Yeah.
And that makes me in a way very angry.
Yeah.
But also this situation is so far away from how I live and where I live that I can't imagine where these thoughts come from, right?
Yeah. I think you have to look at it from 2 or 3 points of view. Firstly, people can reject children, even those that are not having disabilities. That's something that really happens. But then when you have a family who has a child with a disability, especially severe and
Samuel explains that there are several reasons behind this horrific idea. First, he says, there is a sense of hopelessness surrounding the child. Sometimes a parent believes it would be better for the child to die. That life would simply be too much for them. They see no way out.
And in their own small mind and in their own tight community with nothing other than the basic understanding of I have a child and this child looks like this and this and this and these deformities. This child is better off dead than alive. Now, that's one way that they look at it.
And then there is the harsh reality of extreme poverty. Something that is hard to grasp for someone from a country like the Netherlands. Children who can't work are seen as bad investments.
How can I put this? Africans, or generally, they look at children as investments. So they invest in the child grows up, and then they expect the child now to support them in future. Now, giving back to a child who they think cannot support them ever, they'll are saying, okay, this is a liability, and they want to give the child away. So,
And finally, there is deep-rooted tradition and stigma. Stories about evil spirits, curses and rituals. Like the belief within Annabel's family that Annabel is possessed by the devil.
we have a lot of traditional perspectives.
And often, Samuel says, it's a mixture of all these ideas.
But then in general, I feel it's really inhumane, and it's something that should not even be considered because it's diabolic, and when you look at the cruel way that it is being done in some areas, it's really, really sad.
Back at the hotel, I try to share my insights out loud to put them in order. All right, let's see. It's on? Yes. Okay, hi. So, that was the first day. You know, I already read a couple of days ago that I was gonna visit Annabel, but then the story didn't really get to me yet. It was really when I entered the room that I felt it. It's weird how that works. I think it has everything to do with why seeing a child drown in the pond or seeing Annabel makes you want to act immediately, but just reading her story on a page doesn't hit you as hard, even though you still know it's real. I do want to know how that works, that emotion, that empathy you feel when you actually see someone in real life, and how that works in your brain. And I already know someone who can tell me more about that, but that is something for when I'm back in the Netherlands. Tomorrow morning, Samuel is here at the hotel again, and we're going to visit other children. And I have a bunch of questions about this beautiful but complicated country. More tomorrow. Next time on The Child in the Pond.
Hi, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
I'm Femi.
My name is Max.
Yeah, it was terrible. Every family has something that they lost.
Were you in the country during the war?
Yeah.
If she dies, then Alaji has no other option but to die too.
With just a few tweaks, he's going to have a better life.
Right, so she knows it's gonna not help the case of Alaji if she
Exactly.
says that honestly.
Exactly.
The Child in the Pond is a podcast made by me, Max Boogaard, in collaboration with Liliane Fonds. For more information on the work of the Liliane Fonds and pictures of this episode, visit lilianefonds.org/podcast.